If I could go back to 2014, I'd go and find the 25-year-old version of me. He's at a desk in Amsterdam, headphones on and a spreadsheet open, and here's the thing about him. He's not lost, he's not panicking, he's not making obvious mistakes. He thinks he's doing great, he thinks he's being responsible, he thinks he's playing the game well. And I'd pull up a chair next to him and I'd say, hey, I'm not here to scare you. You're going to be okay, but you're about to spend 10 years being responsible inside a system that quietly stopped rewarding responsible, and nobody's going to tell you that until it's almost over. So I'm going to tell you now. There are 5 things, just listen. This isn't just some letter in a drawer to a younger me. Some of you listening right now, you're at that desk. You're 25, 30, 35. You're making the big decisions this year. Kids, career, where your money goes. You're still in time to do this differently. I didn't have anyone to tell me. Hey there. I'm Bram Kanstein, and this is Bitcoin for Millennials. And in this episode, I aim to be of value to you by sharing everything I wish I'd knew about money 10 years before I actually did. If you're enjoying my content, it would mean a lot to me if you could subscribe to the channel and like my video to support my journey. Thanks a lot. Now let's dive in. So let me tell you what I tell him. Here's the one sentence my entire message is built on. All the advice around money and finance that you were given assumed a system that no longer exists. That's the thing nobody told him. Everything he absorbed in 2014, save hard, buy when you can, max out your pension, stay sensible, all of it was good advice for a system that quietly stopped being the system. The advice never got the update, but the world did. There's a term I want you to hold on to for the entire episode, the slow leak. I'll come back to it. So here's lesson 1. And it's the one he'd argue with me about the hardest. At 25, I thought saving money was the smart, safe adult move. You earn, you spend less than you earn, you park the difference in the bank, and you watch the number go up. You feel like you're winning, right? That's the story. Saving is a virtue, saving is patience, and that's the responsible path. Everyone told you that. But here's what nobody told you. Those euros in the account were melting. And I don't mean poetically, I mean you could actually measure it. From 2014 to right now, cumulative inflation in the Netherlands ran somewhere around 30 to 33%. In the Eurozone, about 28 to 32%. In the US, closer to 38-40%. Let me put that in plain language, because the percentages slide right off your brain, right? A euro saved in 2014 and just held on to, it buys you about 65 to 70 cents of 2014 life today. You didn't lose money, you still might have the same or even more numbers, right? The number didn't go down. You lost what that money could actually do. Roughly a third of it just quietly evaporated while you were being a good person. And here's the part that would really get him going. This wasn't bad luck like it wasn't the weather. The US money supply, the M2 number, went from about $15.4 trillion in February 2020 to about $21.7 trillion by April 2022. That's a 41% increase in 25 months. The steepest peacetime money expansion in American history, basically in 2 years, and Europe ran its own version of the same thing. The savers didn't do anything wrong. The rules changed under their feet and the advice was never updated. So that's lesson 1. Cash is not the neutral choice. It is not the safe corner you stand in while you decide. Holding the currency is a position. It's a bet that the people who can print it won't. And you've been quietly losing that bet your entire adult life without ever sitting down and deciding to make it. And that's the slow leak. And we're going to keep finding it everywhere. And notice what just happened. The advice, save hard, was actually sound. The system it assumed is the part that disappeared. All right, so here's lesson 2. And this one took me years to actually feel, not just understand. Back in 2014, I genuinely thought I was a player in the game. I had a job, I was looking to apply for a mortgage, and I got spreadsheets, yo. Later on, I'd actually work in traditional finance. And you know what? Working inside that machine, that was the thing that finally opened my eyes. Maybe later than I should have, or maybe that's exactly the time it took. You kind of have to be in the room to realize that the room isn't what you thought it was. You have to watch how the decisions are actually made before it really lands that nobody in there is smarter than you. They're just standing closer to the money. That's not a vibe. That's not me being cynical. It has a name. It's called the Cantillon effect. Richard Cantillon in the 18th century. He noticed the single most underrated thing about money, and almost nobody talks about it. When new money gets made, it doesn't rain down on everyone evenly at the same second. It comes in at specific doors. Banks, asset holders, the connected elite. The people standing near the door get to spend that new money before prices move up. And the people far from the door, wage earners, savers, renters, 25-year-old me, and you, they get the money last, after everything already got more expensive. This is the same currency, but a totally different deal, depending on where you're standing in line. And I want to give my younger self the number because the number is brutal. By late 2025, the top 1% of US households owned 31.7% of all the wealth, the highest since they started measuring it in 1989. That 1% holds about as much as the entire bottom 90% put together. Boomers, about a fifth of all people, hold over half the wealth. Millennials, a similar slice of the population, hold maybe 10 to 11. The typical first-time homebuyer in the US is now 40 years old. 40. When I was 25, that number was 30. Most people stop too early with Bitcoin. They buy it, maybe move it to a wallet and think they are done. But they're not. The real questions are how you're securing it, how private your setup is, and whether you're verifying your own transactions or trusting someone else. And what happens to your Bitcoin when something happens to you? This is the layer that most people ignore, and it's the most important one. That's why I've been working with the Bitcoin Way. They help you set up self-custody properly, including privacy, cybersecurity, inheritance, and even running your own node. And they do it without ever touching your Bitcoin. They're not a custodian, they're your support team. If you're serious about this like I am, go to thebitcoinway.com/Bram, that's BRAM, to book a free call. They'll walk you through your setup, personalize everything to you, and help you get a much stronger position very quickly, whether you're a beginner or more advanced. That's thebitcoinway.com/Bram. Every Bitcoiner hits this moment. You need cash, maybe for a house deposit, an emergency, or a tax bill, and you're staring at your stack thinking, do I really want to sell this? Here's the thing, you don't have to. You can borrow against your Bitcoin instead, so there's also no taxable event and your stack can keep on stacking. This is where Firefish comes in, a peer-to-peer marketplace for Bitcoin-backed loans. And Firefish is not a lender. They built a protocol that makes this all possible, which is exactly why they never, ever have to touch your Bitcoin. During your loan, your Bitcoin sits in an on-chain multisig secured by open source code. You can find offers for different amounts, durations, and rates at firefish.io. And when you decide to get a loan, you can use code BRAM to get 30% off your first loan's fees. That's firefish.io and code BRAM. So here's the thing I tell my younger self. You think you are a player, but you're not. You're the thing the game is played with. Those asset prices you keep watching go up, that house you can almost afford, that's not a market you're losing to. That's the scoreboard of a game you were never invited to. You weren't the player, you were the pawn. Now, here's the good part, because I don't want to just leave him there, right? The second you actually see this clearly, it stops working on you. You cannot unsee where the line forms once somebody shows you the door. Lesson 5 is going to be entirely about what you do once you've seen it. But first, lesson 3, and this is the one I most wish someone had told me because it explains a bunch of decisions I made back then that I genuinely could not explain to myself later. Here's what most people get wrong about money stress. They think it is just unpleasant. They think it's an emotion, something you grit your teeth through while you go on making your normal, rational choices. But that's wrong. Money pressure does not stand politely next to your judgment, it gets inside of it. There's a study published in Science in 2013 that looked at sugarcane farmers in India before harvest and after. The same people, poor before they got paid and comfortable after. Same brains, same person, same month, just a different money state. And the difference in cognitive performance between broke and not broke was equivalent to about 13 IQ points. The researchers compared it to pulling an all-nighter. Financial scarcity doesn't make you sad, it makes you measurably worse at thinking. It eats the bandwidth of your brain, it tunnels you down into the next bill, and it quietly steals the part of your mind that does the long, calm, strategic stuff. And I mean, you can feel this, right? That feeling when money's tight and somehow every other decision in your life is also getting worse, foggier, and you get more reactive. That's not you being weak, that's a documented effect. It's a tax on your mind. And here's why it matters more than any other lesson. A system that keeps most people just slightly behind, slightly stretched, slightly anxious about money. That system isn't only draining their savings, it's degrading the exact mental muscle they need to notice it and climb out. The Austrian economists have a term for this symptom. It's called high time preference, which just means you start grabbing the small thing now instead of building the big thing later. But here's the reframe. It's not a character flaw. Millennials aren't impatient or bad with money. Depreciating money manufactures this impatience. It rewires the people living in it to think short, spend now, and never quite get the space and time needed to ask why. So, lesson three. The money problem was never only in your account, it was in your head too. Not because you were weak, but because the system puts it there. And the calm, long, clear thinking you need to get out, that's the very thing it's quietly taxing. Remember that, because it's going to make the last two lessons land very differently. Lesson 4. The first three are heavy, and this one is the door swinging open. At 25, I treated the financial system like it was the weather, like it just was, right? The way money worked felt as fixed and as natural as gravity. Something you adapt to and never really something that you question. Definitely not something you could just walk out of. But this is what should crack that wide open. The system you're treating as a law of physics is younger than your parents. The modern money era, money backed by nothing but trust and decree, it started on a very specific date. August 15th, 1971. That's the day the US cut the dollar's last link to gold. And that is the starting line. The whole arrangement that we live in is barely 50 years old. Your dad is older than the dollar you're saving so carefully, and money regimes change constantly across history. Gold, silver, Bretton Woods, and this one. This is not the final form of anything, it is just the current one that you are forced to use. And if you live in the EU like me, your current form of money is only about 26 years old. Anthropologist David Graeber wrote the line, "I'd make my younger self tattoo somewhere." He said, "The ultimate hidden truth of the world is that it is something that we make and could just as easily make differently." And Steve Jobs said a more blunt, more useful version back in a 1994 interview. He said, "Everything around you that you call life was made up by people no smarter than you. You can change it. You can build your own things. And once you learn that," he said, "you will never be the same again." This is the exact realization that working in finance eventually forced on me, and I just handed to my younger self for free. The reality around us, it's built and maintained by people who are no better than us. They're not supervillains, they're mostly just people following the incentives right in front of them and the paradigm that they got handed. The same paradigm you were about to spend 10 years swallowing whole, which means the system isn't sacred. It isn't permanent. It's a pile of agreements held up by people no smarter than you. Anything held up by people no smarter than you is something you're allowed to step out of. All right, lesson 5. Let's wrap it up. I'd say to my younger self, look, I just hit you with 4 pretty heavy things. Your cash is leaking, you're collateral, not a player, the pressure's editing your judgment, and the whole system is just a 50-year-old handshake, not a law of nature. So what do you actually do with that? Because if all I've done is make you cynical, I failed you. And cynicism is just despair in a smarter looking jacket. It is not the answer. Being a doomer requires zero effort. So here's the move. You stop trying to win the game on its terms, and you take control of real ownership of something the game cannot print, dilute, and it can't quietly skim it from the side. For me, that's Bitcoin, and not the number go up part. That's just the old high time preference brain we talked about in lesson 3. I mean it as a savings technology, as a superior savings technology. A fixed supply of 21 million that no bank, no central bank, nobody standing near the front of that Cantillon line can inflate to dilute you from behind. And you can hold it yourself with your own keys. So it's not a promise from a counterparty like the number in your bank account, it's an actual thing that you own. That is the entire point. The point was never to get rich. The point is to get out of the position where someone else's money printer is a silent tax on your one life. Now, I'm going to be honest with you the way I'd want someone to be honest with the kid at that desk, because this whole letter is worth nothing if it turns into a sales pitch in the last 5 minutes. What I'm telling you is the position of someone who studied this for years. It is not financial advice and it is a thesis. There is no guarantee. Bitcoin has dropped more than 70% multiple times, and it fell about 50% in just the last year. El Salvador walked its experiment back and under pressure from the IMF. Even the biggest corporate holder just sold some Bitcoin to fund his business. None of that is hidden. All of that is the price of an asset that's still early enough to actually matter. The volatility of it is the toll you pay to stand somewhere the printer cannot reach you. It is not the product is the exit. And here's the hard data point I'd leave my younger self with. More than 60% of all the Bitcoin that exists hasn't moved in a long, long time. Most of the people who actually understand this thing are not trading it. They're holding it the way you would hold land, the way you were promised saving would feel, back before saving quietly stopped working. That behavior, that's the whole thesis compressed in a single number. It is a superior savings technology, and the people using it that way are voting with stillness. Hold that against the slow leak from lesson 1. One is your money quietly draining out, the other is people quietly refusing to let it. So, lesson 5. The exit was always personal. It was never going to be a collective rescue, not a policy fix, not a better government, not a kinder central bank riding in. It was always one private decision, available to one person at a time, mostly ignored, usually mocked, but right up until it isn't. And you can take that decision now, quietly, before you're 40, reading a letter like this one, wishing somebody had put it in your hands earlier. So sitting there next to him, I wouldn't end on Bitcoin, I would end on him. I'd put a hand on his shoulder and I'd say the goal here was never money. Money was only ever supposed to be a tool, a way to store the work you already did so you can use it later on your terms on something that actually matters to you. The trap was never being rich or not rich. The trap was letting a tool that you don't control quietly become the thing that controls you. What you do, how you earn, how short or long you think, what you even let yourself believe is possible. And that is the real theft and the spiritual crime committed against you. You did everything that they told you to do. And here's the thing, the advice was sound, it just assumed a system that no longer exists, and nobody handed you the rulebook for the one that replaced it. That's not your fault, but what you do in the next 10 years, now that you've actually seen the rulebook, that part, that's yours. And some of you listening, you might still be at that desk, but please know that you're still in time. And that's not a small thing, that's the entire thing. So, study Bitcoin, stay humble, stay solvent, and stack set. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, you can click here to find more just like it, and click here to find all Bitcoin for Millennials podcast episodes. Also, if you want to help me shine a light on the message of Bitcoin, please like this video and subscribe to stay connected. I hope to see you for a next episode. Bye.